few hours ago, I spoke at the funeral in Queens and offered condolences on behalf of all 8.5 million New Yorkers for the two good men that we lost, Maulana Akonji and Thara Uddin, two men of faith, two leaders of their community, two teachers, two guides, two people who helped to make their neighborhood and this city a better place, killed in cold blood. I offered my condolences, but I also assured the members of the Bangladeshi community and of the Muslim community all over this city that the killer will be brought to justice. And as you're about to hear, NYPD is well on its way to fulfilling that mandate, bringing this case to fruition, and bringing justice to a community that is hurting so deeply right now. It's also clear there's a lot of fear in the community. It's a very rare thing to see a cleric killed, and members of the Muslim community have been on edge because of the atmosphere already that existed in this country, particularly over the last few months in our national debate. So I assured the members of the community that NYPD would be out in force, protecting community institutions, protecting Muslim communities all over the city. That will be all members of the NYPD, but as is so important to remind everyone, that includes the 900 members of the NYPD who are Muslim Americans and serve us all. It is a painful time, but it's a time where we will reaffirm that in this city, we believe an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And we will work together to encourage the kind of harmony, kind of unity that New Yorkers believe in, and we'll work against these divisive voices that have become so strong in our country. And the best way for us to put that into action is to show the Muslim community that we will keep them safe even in this difficult time. With that, I'd like to turn to Commissioner Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we'd like to do now, a little more than 48 hours after the events of Saturday, the murder of these two men, is provide an update to you on where we are with our investigation. Over the past 48 hours, detectives have worked tirelessly on this case of the murders of the Imam and his associate on Saturday afternoon in Queens. Through extraordinarily diligent investigative efforts, and I want to compliment Bob Boyce and his detectives on their work, detectives were able to develop a strong lead into a suspect very early on, based on an unrelated incident that occurred in Brooklyn approximately 10 minutes after the shooting in Queens, 3 miles away. Shooting occurred in Brooklyn, and about 3 miles away in Queens we had shooting in Queens, about 3 miles away we had an accident that occurred in Brooklyn that the detectives were able to determine was potentially linked to the shooting. Chief Bob Boyce will brief you on how this case came together so quickly and where we are with the investigation at this time, some 48 hours after the occurrence on Saturday afternoon. Bob?
Good evening, everyone. At the crime scene, the double homicide on Liberty and 79th Street at about 3:50 in the afternoon, detectives immediately responded and were able to do a video canvass of that area. During that video canvass, we were able to identify a vehicle, a black GMC Trailblazer that fled the scene in a quick fashion. We also identified a person running into that car and taking off directly after the homicide. Now, I think we put out the video of him, this individual running down the street. We were able to trace him video-wise into the car, and he took off. He then went up to Liberty Avenue, made a right, and then disappeared into traffic. He went eastbound. Detectives immediately took that car, Trailblazer, put it into our data systems, and came up with a car accident, a hit and run that happened at the corner of Pine and Pitkin at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is about 3 miles away. We immediately responded to that location and pulled video from that corner, and we had looked at the two cars, and they were identical. We looked at stickers and decals on each of the windshields, and they seemed identical. Again, we had no plate at that time. You couldn't determine the alphanumeric on the yellow New York tag. At that point, we began to do a grid search. We thought we had our person at this point fleeing the scene of the crime. Now, we have a witness from that hit and run on the male on the bicycle who identified an individual, who said he could identify an individual. We then sat on a car that we found a couple hours later in the vicinity of that hit and run and waited for that person to emerge from that block. That person emerged about 10 o'clock last night and got into the vehicle. Detectives from the Fugitive Task Force approached the car, and then he rammed the detective's car several times in an effort to get away. He was placed under arrest without any further incident and brought back to the precinct for more debriefing. We found the witness, and the witness picked that individual out of a photo array for doing the hit and run. So we're back, we're looking at him for both crimes, for the homicide and that. He is described as a male Hispanic, 36 years old. We are not going to release his name at this point. We still have a long way to go in this investigation, and there's no point to it now. We'll have lineups later on tonight with individuals who observed the homicide. That's where we stand right now in the investigation. Steve?
Any questions? In terms of you ruled out hate crime with motive, if you could talk anything about that.
Yeah. Motive right now has not been determined. We're still drilling down on it as we go forward. That's certainly on the table, a hate crime. Right now, we can't explain why this person was there. He was there just prior to that. We have him on video about 8 minutes prior to the homicide, and then he takes off directly afterwards. We'll put those facts together and go forward in exploring his life to see what's going on, that it's possible, that it's either hate crime or some other motive.
You guys obtained a search warrant, you've been in a home, and then can you just talk about where this person is from?
Sure. He is from East New York, Brooklyn. We obtained a search warrant probably about half hour ago. We're now about to do a search warrant on his home. We're obviously looking for the gun that committed the weapon that committed the homicide, as well as clothing that he wore at that point. We also have his vehicle. That'll be taken to a facility. We'll do a proper search on that too. We need a search warrant for that as well. Other things may arise, Miles, as far as a phone search and things like that, and we'll go forward that way.
Is there any connection that you know of between this person you have in custody and the Imam or his associate?
None that we can develop thus far, Jim. We took a hard look at this, and he's from East New York, his address. That's the next next area over in 106 there. So right now, we don't have that yet. Rocco. Yeah. I don't want to get into that just yet, because we're not sure exactly. We believe he works in a warehouse somewhere in East New York, but we're not sure where. Can't comment on that either.
Chief, how close does the suspect, the person look to the sketch that's been put out? Good resemblance, poor resemblance?
Yeah, you know, the picture we had of him was several years old, so I looked at that today. I was sent pictures. I don't want to speculate that, and we're doing the lineups tonight. I don't want to prejudice that lineup at all in any fashion by saying it looks close. Don't want to say it.
Have any witnesses come forward to see if they've heard anything from words exchanged between the victims or the
No. Unfortunately, that tape we did not put out. You saw the tape where both individuals were shot. He came up behind them. We followed that up the street. There doesn't appear to be any words at all.
You know, I know you don't want to get into his past, his prior history, but I'm wondering, there was some talk, at least in public reports, about that this person, you know, the suspect must have some kind of gun training. Is there any indication that that may be the case?
No, not as of yet, Miles. No.
Chief, in the community who's worried that Pastor Billy is still on the loose, with a message with this man in custody?
Yes, Jonathan. We believe this is a strong person of interest right now. As the hours click forward, as we go through our identification procedures, we'll of course get stronger in that. But we believe, because of the evidence we've acquired thus far, that we strongly believe this is the individual. We do have some statements, but I'm not going to speculate on those statements right now.
Chief, has the person invoked right to counsel?
Not going to mention that. I'm not going to say that either, Anthony.
And what's he being put on charges of?
He's being charged right now with the hit and run. That's why I arrested him for. And of course, the assault on my police officers.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.